أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا بين يدي الساعة من يطع الله ورسوله فقد رشد ومن يسهما فإنه لا يضر إلا نفسه ولا يضر الله شيئا فقد قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي ربي زدني علما سبحان الله وبحمده سبحان الله العظيم. My dear audiences and my dear friends, brothers and sisters who are watching through Facebook, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is a great pleasure for me to attend this Tafsirul Mahfil, and for this reason, at the very beginning, at the commencement of this Tafsirul Mahfil, I would like to express my deep gratitude to our only one Creator, Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, all praises are for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In today's Tafsirul Mahfil, inshallah, we shall have a discussion on verse number 13 from Suratul Huzurat. So as usual, at first we shall have recitation as well as meaning of this verse. Then inshallah we shall go to the elaborate discussion. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, Subhanallahil azim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin abdika wa rasulik. I seek refuge, I seek shelter to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the accursed devil, from the accursed shaitan, and I am beginning with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is most merciful, most beneficent. Ya ayyuhan nasu inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. O people of the world, obviously I have created you from a male and a female. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ ثُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. And then I have made among you nations and tribes so that you may be acquainted, you may be familiar with one another, with each other. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Obviously, he who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most is the most respected to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna Allah alimun khabir. Obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all knowing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything. And everything is being perused by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said the truth, and his prophets and messengers have also said the truth. All praises are for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All praises are for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the only one creator. O Allah, bless your prophet and servant Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this was the recitation as well as meaning of ayat number 13 of Suratul Huzurat. This is surah number 49 from the Holy Qur'an, and we will find this surah in part number 26. This is a Madani surah. This surah was revealed upon our beloved Prophet during his prophetic life in Medina. Hujuratun, the word Hujuratun means a room, a cabin, a ward, and Hujurat is the plural number, Jama, plural number of Hujuratun. That means Hujurat means cabins, rooms, wards, etc. In verse number 13, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is firstly saying that I have created you by only one male and female. That means we have all the people of this world have been created. Our origination is from Father Adam and Mother Hawa alayhi salam. That means at first Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam alayhi salam, and then Mother Hawa alayhi salam was created, and then all the people of the world, we, our predecessor and our next generation who will come, everyone has come from single male and female, that is Prophet Adam alayhi salam and Mother Hawa alayhi salam. And after our creation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala divided us in tribes and nations. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has divided us in tribes and nations so that we may be familiar, we may know each other. And in the next portion of this verse, for this portion I have selected this verse in today's tafsir. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Obviously, who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most is the most respected man to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created all the people of the world. But who are respected to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What is the criteria for which a man or woman, a male or female, will be respected to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described the criteria, the characteristics here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not see our faces. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not see our tribes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not see our wealth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not see our physical fitness. In order to become respected to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the only criteria is fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the word atqa has come from the word ittiqa'un. Ittiqa'un means preventing, to prevent. That means fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in today's tafsir, at first we shall go to other relevant verses from the Holy Qur'an. Those are relevant in today's tafsir. The word ittiqa'un. Ittiqa'un means fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is taqwa. The main theme, the main teachings of Islam is at first Tawheed. And after accepting Tawheed, the next thing is fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is called taqwa. Before going to the relevant verses from the other parts of the Holy Quran, I would like to refer a hadith. Our beloved Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has said, has given a definition of taqwa. I think that hadith is at first required to be mentioned here. An Abi Hurairah radhiyallahu anhu قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم التقوى ها هنا ويشير إلى صدره ثلاث مرار رواه مسلم. Sahih hadith. In book of Hadith Muslim has narrated this hadith. It is a Sahih hadith. There is no doubt about this hadith. This hadith has been narrated by Hazrat Abu Hurairah radhiyallahu anhu. He said, our beloved Prophet has said, At-taqwa. Ha huna taqwa. That is huna. Wa yashiru. And he pointed ila sadrihi, to his chest. Salasu mirror. 3 times. Our beloved Prophet has given an excellent definition of taqwa. At-taqwa ha huna. Wa yashiru ila sadrihi salasu marra. At-taqwa, at-taqwa, at-taqwa. At-taqwa ha huna. At-taqwa ha huna. At-taqwa ha huna. That means, taqwa means the position of our heart, state of mind. So, from this hadith, we have got an excellent definition of taqwa. That means taqwa remains in our heart. Fearness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remains in our heart. This is called the taqwa. At-taqwa ha huna wa yashiru ila sadrihi salasu miror. Taqwa is here, taqwa is here, taqwa is here. Fearness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is here. Fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is here. Fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is here. This is the definition given by our beloved Prophet regarding taqwa. Fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This hadith has been inserted in the book of Muslim, Sahih Muslim. Now inshallah, we shall go to other relevant verse from the Holy Quran. Those are relevant in today's tafsir. At first, verse number 1 and 2 from Suratul Baqarah. Suratul Baqarah, second surah from the Holy Quran. Alif Lam Mim. Zalikal kitabu la rayba fihi hudan lil muttaqin. Alif Lam Mim. This is the book. Zalikal kitab la rayba fihi. This is the book where there is no doubt. There is no confusion. There is no suspect. There is no question. That means the Holy Quran, which has been revealed by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the book revealed by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this book does not have any doubt, does not have any suspect, does not have any question. And here, next portion of this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Hudan lil muttaqin. And this book is the guidance for the people who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The word muttaqin has come from the word ittiqa'un. Ittiqa'un means fearness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and muttaqi means those persons who possesses the quality, criteria of ittiqa'un. I have referred this verse because in this verse the word ittiqa'un has been used. Muttaqi, lil muttaqin. Next relevant verse in today's tafsir is verse number 183 from Suratul Baqarah. Verse number 183 is very much familiar to us, and during the month of Ramadan we used to hear this verse a lot. Here Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also used the word ittiqa'un, and for this reason I have selected this verse. Here Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyamu kama kutiba alal ladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. O the believers, fasting has been made mandatory for you as fasting was made mandatory for the earliers, for the formers. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. It is hoped that you will earn fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here, tattaqun, in what tattaqun, ittiqa'un is lie. Ittiqa'un is there. That means during the month of Ramadan we keep fasting during day. During day we do not eat and we do not drink. Sometimes, many times, we remain in a house where no one is there. If we eat something or if we drink something, no one will see us. But we do not eat and drink. Why? Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us. We are being watched. We are being seen. We are being perused by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So by keeping fasting, by fasting, a man earns fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A man earns taqwa. So this was verse number 183, where the word ittiqa'un has been used. Next relevant verse in today's tafsir is verse number 102 from Suratul Ali Imran. In verse number 102, Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Verse number 102, Suratul Al-Imran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing the believers. O the believers. Ittaqu. Earn fearness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fear Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, haqqa tuqatihi, properly, as He should be feared. Fear Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as He should be feared. Fear Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala properly. وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. Next portion of verse number 102 is very much relevant. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing the believers. Believers mean they have accepted Islam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying the Muslims, saying the Mu'mins, saying the believers, وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. O believers, do not die until you are Muslims. That means after accepting Islam, we are doing something. Those amount to reject Islam, but we do not know it. The main theme of Islam is Tawheed. Ma Tawheedu. What is Tawheed? At-Tawheedu imanun bi ilahi wahid. Tawheed means having belief, keeping belief on oneness of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many Muslims, after accepting Islam, they are losing their faith because of doing some activities. Suppose many Muslims used to go to the grave of a awliya. They call it, he is awliya. Nauzubillahi min zalik. And they used to have sajda on the grave. It amounts to reject Islam. Some Muslims go to some peer. They are claiming that they are the peer, they are the scholar of Islam. And many Muslims go to the scholars, many scholars, so-called scholars, and they used to have sajda. And by giving sajda to a man, a Muslim is rejecting Islam. Many Muslims say that this Qur'an is not capable to rule this world nowadays. Nauzubillahi min zalik. Many Muslims say that this Qur'an has been revealed 1,500 years ago, 1,500 years ago. And this Qur'an cannot rule a country, the world. Nauzubillahi min zalik. Many Muslims say it. If a Muslim says it, that Qur'an is not capable to rule a country, to rule the world nowadays, he is rejecting Islam. It amounts to reject Islam. Being a Muslim, we shall have to have belief that this Qur'an was revealed 1,500 years ago. And 1,500 years ago, on the basis of this Qur'an, our beloved Prophet, Khulafai Rashidin, have ruled the whole world. And still, a country, all the countries of the world can be ruled on the basis of the rules and regulations given in the Quran. Being a Muslim, we must have this belief. If we do not have this belief, it amounts to reject Islam. And for this reason, in verse number 102, Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatihi. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatihi wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. O the believers, fear Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as He should be feared, and do not die until you are Muslims. So being a Muslim, we always remember one thing, that Iman, faith on Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best asset of a Muslim, is the best asset of a believer of Islam. We shall always think that we shall not do anything which shall affect our faith on Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for this reason, in verse 102, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked the believers to earn fearness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that they may not lose their faith during the life of this world. So this was verse 102 from Suratul Ali Imran, relevant in today's tafsir. Next relevant verse in today's tafsir is verse number 119 from Surah Tawbah. Surah Tawbah, verse number 119. Here Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha wa kunu mas-sadiqin. O the believers, fear Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be with the truthful. Include yourself with the persons, those are truthful. In order to earn fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, speaking the truth is mandatory, obligatory for each and every Muslim. Many times we used to say that always speak the truth, it is a proverb. No. Always speak the truth, it is not a proverb. It is the version of our only one creator by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 1500 years ago. Always speak the truth, it is the utterances of our creator Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not a proverb. It is from the Holy Qur'an. Always speak the truth. And if we speak the truth, it shall help us in earning fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in earning taqwa. So this was verse number 119. Here in verse number 119, we find that there is a relation in between taqwa and speaking the truth. Without speaking the truth, we cannot earn fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, it is the precondition in Islam to speak the truth in order to earn taqwa, in order to earn fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next relevant verse in today's tafsir is verse number 128 from Suratul Nahl. Verse number 128, Suratul Nahl is relevant in today's tafsir. Here Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Inna Allaha ma'al ladhina taqaw wal ladhina hum muhsinun. Obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with them. Those fear Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those do good deeds. That means if we achieve the fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if we do good deeds, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always remain with us. This is verse number 128. So, speaking the truth is the precondition to earn fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Doing good deeds is the precondition to earn fairness, to earn taqwa for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was verse number 128 from Suratul Nahl. Next relevant verse in today's tafsir is verse number 37 from Suratul Hajj. In verse number 37, Suratul Hajj, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, لا ينال الله لحومها ولا دماؤها ولكن يناله التقوى منكم. During the Eid al-Adha, Eid of sacrifice, we used to sacrifice animals for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, you slaughtered, you sacrifice animals, but neither meat nor the blood reach to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we sacrifice an animal during the festival of sacrifice, Eid al-Adha, neither blood of that animal nor flesh or meat of that animal reaches to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What reaches? وَلَا دِمَاؤُهَا وَلَكِنْ يَنَالُهُ التَّقْوَى مِنْكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees our position of hearts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees the reason of our heart why we are sacrificing animals. Whether we are sacrificing animals to make show off, whether we are sacrificing animals to have meat, whether we are sacrificing animal to earn name and fame in the society, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees the reason of our heart why we are sacrificing animals. So, in order to earn fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order to earn taqwa, our reason in our heart will be only for the pleasant of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We shall make sacrifice only to please only one Creator, Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was verse number 37 from Suratul Hajj, relevant in today's tafsir. Next relevant verse in today's tafsir is verse number 52. Verse number 52 from Suratul Nur. Surah An-Nur, verse number 52. Here Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيَخْشَ اللَّهَ وَيَتَّقْهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَائِزُونَ. Whoever follow Allah and His Messenger and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will be succeeded. He will be the victorious. Here I have selected this verse because the word taqwa has also been used here. وَيَتَّقْهِ ittiqa'un, fairness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That means in order to get success in the life of hereafter, we shall follow Allah and His Messenger. And our reason in our heart will be only for the pleasure of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for no one else. Next relevant verse number Huzurat. Today we are having discussion on verse number 13, and verse number 18 from Suratul Huzurat is also relevant here. In verse number 18, last verse of Surah Huzurat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُ غَيْبَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاللَّهُ بَصِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. Obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the unseen, either on the sky or in the earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing everything is being seen by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what we are doing. That means our functions, our activities, our deeds are being perused by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We shall always remember one thing, that if we are alone in a house, we shall not think that I am alone. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. If a person remains in a house, he must have believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with him. That means our activities, our functions are being perused by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being a Muslim, we know that there are two angels on our two shoulders. In the right shoulders there is an angel, and in the left shoulder there is another angel. Both the angels had been termed as Kiraman Katibin, respected writer. Our right angel used to write down our good deeds, and our left angel used to write down our misdeeds, wrong deeds. Both the angels have been termed as Kiraman Katibin by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Both the angels have been declared respected writer. So being a Muslim, we shall always have belief that two angels are always with us, and Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is obviously with us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perusing us from the Arsh Azim, from his throne. He is perusing everything. Now, verse number 16 from Suratul is very much relevant in today's tafsir. Here Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ وَنَعْلَمُ مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ. Obviously, I have created people, I have created men, I have created the human being. وَنَعْلَمُ, and I know, مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُ, what his soul whispers. That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what is in our heart. Though we express it or not, it is known by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being a Muslim, we must believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala peruses everything. Even if we have any thought in our heart, either we express or do not express, it is known to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. There is a vein in our neck. Physicians and medical students are very much familiar with this vein. This vein is called in medical science jugular vein. This jugular vein is so nearer to us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I am nearer to you than this jugular vein. Allahu Akbar. So being a Muslim, we shall always have belief that we shall not do any misdeed. We shall not involve ourselves with any wrong deeds, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always with us. All the activities are being recorded, being perused, being seen by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was verse number 16 from Suratul, relevant in today's tafsir. Now, verse number 18 from Suratul Hasr is relevant in today's tafsir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدٍ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. In this verse, the word ittaqaun has been used 2 times. Firstly, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu ittaqullah, ittaqaun. O the believers, fear Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wal tanzur nafsum ma qaddamat ligad. Each and every man should think what he has sent for tomorrow. Tomorrow means for the day of judgment, for the day of Qiyamah. Wattaqullah, the word ittaqaun is here. Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna Allah khabirum bima ta'malun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what we are doing here. So, in today's discussion, in today's tafsir, the main word was ittaqaun. Ittaqaun means fearness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As at the very beginning of this tafsir, I mentioned a hadith from our beloved Prophet, Sahih Muslim, that at-taqwa hahuna wa yashiru ila sadrihi salasu mirar. Taqwa is here, and he pointed 3 times. Taqwa is here, taqwa is here, taqwa is here. So, we shall always fear Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We shall always keep in our mind that our all the activities, our all the words, our all the functions are being recorded, being seen, being perused by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now inshallah we shall go to other relevant hadiths. Those are relevant into this tafsir. Here, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله لا ينظر إلى صوركم وأموالكم ولكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم وأعمالكم. رواه الترمذي Ibn Majah. Our beloved Prophet has said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not see your face. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not see your assets. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees your position of your heart and your activities, your functions. That means a man is very handsome, very long, and he comes from a respected family. These qualities will not be perused by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not see the physical appearance of a person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees the condition of his heart. He is doing a good deeds. What is the reason of his doing good deeds? Whether he is doing the good deeds to earn name and fame in the society, in the family, in the state, or he is doing these good deeds to satisfy, to please the only one creator, Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will see it. So, before doing a good deeds, we must set up one thing, that this good deeds is for the pleasure of only Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for no one else. And if we do good deeds for this purpose, for the purpose of pleasant of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the satisfaction of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these good deeds will help us, both in the life of here and hereafter. This hadith was recorded in Rawah Tirmizi Ibn Majah. Next relevant hadith in today's tafsir is عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال سئل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أي الناس أكرم. The companions of our beloved Prophet asked our Prophet, which person is respected to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? قال, our beloved Prophet said, أكرمهم عند الله أتقاهم. That person is respected to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who fears Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most. As I said at the very commencement of this tafsir, that fearness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the main substance of Islam after Tawheed. After Tawheed, after accepting Tawheed, after accepting invitation of Tawheed, we must set up the taqwa, fearness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our heart. And as our beloved Prophet was asked by his companions, who is respected to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Our beloved Prophet replied that that person is respected to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most. Next relevant verse in today's tafsir is, this is Rawahu Muslim. An Ibn Masudin radiyallahu anhu, an Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam qala, Kana yakulu, our beloved Prophet used to say, our beloved Prophet used to pray to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-huda wat-tuqa wal-afafa wal-ghina. Rawahu Muslim. We should memorize this dua. This is the dua, this is the prayer of our beloved Prophet, which was prayed by our beloved Prophet many times. And Rawahu Muslim. In the book of Muslim, Sahih Hadith, this hadith was narrated. Our beloved Prophet used to ask to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-huda. Oh Allah, give me guidance. What taqwa? What tuqa? Give me taqwa, fearness for you. Allahu Akbar. Fearness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so important that our beloved Prophet used to pray to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have fearness in his heart. Allahumma inni as'aluka al-huda wat-tuqa wal-afafa wal-ghina. Afafa, chastity, purity. Ghina, wealth, asset. So our beloved Prophet used to pray 4 prayers to our beloved Prophet many times. Al-Huda, that means guidance. Wat-Tuqa, fearness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wal-Afafa, purity, chastity. Wal-Ghina, assets. So, Ittikaun, fearness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very much important in our life. And all the results of all the functions, all the activities in this world mainly depend on ittikaun, on fearness for Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we do good deeds for the satisfaction of Allah, we shall get good reward from Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if we do good deeds to make show of, to earn name and fame, our result will be 0. We shall not get any reward. Now inshallah, we shall have prayer to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And before having prayer, let us recite durood. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma amin. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. اللهم اغفر لحينا وميتنا وشاهدنا وغائبنا وصغيرنا وكبيرنا وذكرنا وأنثانا. اللهم من أحييته منا فأحيه على الإسلام ومن توفيته منا فتوفه على الإيمان. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. رب هب لي من الصالحين. رب زدني علما. اللهم إني أسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. Wallah, we, some of your servants, have been gathered here in this Tafsirul Qur'an Mahfil, and we have discussed from your Holy Qur'an, we have made many mistakes. Please forgive our all mistakes and accept this Tafsirul Quran Mahfil. O Allah, forgive our all sins. O Allah, you know what is in our heart. Please fulfill our all good desires in our heart. O Allah, increase our sustenance. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.